Okay, good morning, everybody. It's nice to be here because I have the chance to talk to the four distinguished speakers, and obviously you have a chance to ask questions. And in fact, I have received quite a number of online questions already. So I would like to start the session immediately. Is it okay? Yeah. The first question, can I address to Henry? The energy consumption usually grows with the economy. And it's very difficult for any government to say that you sort of stop your economic growth because we want to reduce the energy consumption. And furthermore, you know, the controversial issue of developing country and developed country. So developed country don't want to reduce consumption, but developing country want to have economic growth and they want to have more energy consumption. So how do you think that we should do something about this issue? Because otherwise, our children in the developing country will complain, say that, hi there, why you stop the economic growth? I'm still suffering compared with the developed countries.
Thank you very much, Bo. That's a very important question. And this is a question that I have worked together with London University, Imperial College, and also written about in my latest book on climate change, which will be published later on this year. It is, in the past, there is this concept that economic growth and has actually in many countries have power energy growth. And you can see that in China, with China in the early years when it was going for breakneck economic growth, the energy growth actually went up very fast.
Yeah, sure.
And there were energy growths of over 20%, and this generated a lot of greenhouse gas emissions and pollutions, which actually made these economic growth to be unsustainable. And under the new policy, now ecological civilization under the 13th five-year plan, they are changing the economic growth model. And the economic growth is still going on at this moment, although lower, but at a much more sustainable rate at 6 to 6.5%. And as you can see, the new carbon economy is generating new employment and new economic growth with new companies that are being generated. A good example is all the new battery and renewable companies, which has become some of the biggest in the world. And the employment in China has gone up by 4 million in the new renewable sector. Another global example is really Copenhagen. Copenhagen has actually announced, since it hosted the COP22, that it wants to become a green city with low carbon economy and achieve a carbon neutrality by 2030. And it has actually, the city municipal leaders has been going on with this. And that's a very good example to Hong Kong because it's a major urban city in Denmark with actually a very congested area, very low space with millions of population. And it was hard at first, it was difficult. It involved government regulation, new energy policies, but they have pushed that ahead. They have introduced a lot of district heating systems. They have, a lot of the residents have been encouraged to use bicycles. And there's no longer any chimneys on buildings in Copenhagen. But guess what? I mean, they recently did a survey of its citizens. They feel better. They said it was hard at first, but actually this green growth and the changing of has actually improved the environment, reduced pollution, improve environmental standards, make energy more efficient. It's created a lot of jobs. So the citizens are actually very proud to be living in Copenhagen. And they have the lowest carbon per capita emissions in the whole of Europe at this moment in time. So this is possible. And this is an area which happy to advise Hong Kong and share international experience.
Thank you, Henry. So the two can coexist, but you have to try hard. Perhaps my second question addressed to Peter. As a practitioner in energy efficiency and renewable energy, which renewable energy do you think will be the most sustainable in the long term? Because I think it will give us some sort of vision for the future.
Yes. I believe that the most sustainable renewable energy resources in the future is wind and solar. But because they are quite simple to install and they can be replaced, even when they get too old or when technology changes, they will get more efficient, and you can more efficient solar PVs. The wind turbines will become bigger and produce more energy at lower wind speeds, for example. You can put solar PVs on infrastructure, for example, on buildings, on in dams, in water, and if you put it in a dam where you have hydropower, you already have the infrastructure there to for the electricity production. I think what will be very important for wind and solar power is storage, and there are several types of storage available. And for example, pump storage, where you basically use to pump water from a low level to a high level when you have excess electricity. Hydrogen is also a way to you can produce hydrogen from this solar and wind that can be used later. As I mentioned in my presentation, district heating and district cooling can be used to absorb energy from these sources. So yes, I think wind and solar is the most sustainable renewable energy sources. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I think as a follow-up question, maybe I can ask you and also Mr. Wang of CR, a controversial question is, how do you think about nuclear? Nuclear is zero carbon. So do you think that nuclear will be equally good or even better solution than renewable energy?
Yes, nuclear is a bit complicated, but so I believe that nuclear plays a role, especially the existing nuclear power plants, because when producing electricity, they don't produce fossil CO2, so they have a vital role to keep reduce CO2 emissions. And when it comes to new nuclear power plants, it's a bit more tricky. And what I think is important is to investigate whether you can use the waste energy produced by nuclear power for district energy purposes, because even if the efficiency is 30% to produce electricity, it means that 70% of waste heat available or that will be discarded. So there's a huge potential there, even though that nobody want to live close to a nuclear power plant. So, but I think as we're running out of time to tackle climate change, I think nuclear plays a role.
And
okay, the nuclear power used to have a promising future, but with the Japan catastrophe, it has become a very controversial form of the power. So China is now, I think, China is still they are studying the the opportunities to more advancing nuclear power plants. In fact, in 2018, China has bring in one more nuclear plant in Liaoning province for the Hongyanhe nuclear power plant. It would be I think it would be 3 megawatts, 300 megawatts. So I think China is have an attitude, so is you know, is a more positive way on this. But the fact is that most people are not likely to live, you know, near the nuclear plants. Maybe someday it would be somewhere to build new plants with people keep outside, far away from the plants, and people don't worry about the securities, though they may have a way. But in the near future, I don't think it will have a rapid growth. Okay.
Yeah. And I will come back to you, Mr. Wang, to another question. So meanwhile, maybe I can ask a question on Dr. Lee, my friend Dr. Lee, in fact. Coal-fired generation still account for sort of a majority of the world power generation. And gas is only 25%, so there's still sort of a lot of room for growth. And particularly it's driven by the increase in finding the new gas reserve. And recently, the gas reserve has been double, sort of increased by 50%. So many countries are trying to build LNG import station and try to increase the gas-fired generation percentage. But some people say that gas-fired generation is not really a solution to reduce carbon. And some people say that the other way around is with more gas-fired generation, the pace of developing renewable energy could be reduced, could be slowed down. So what do you think about this gas, nuclear in replacing coal? Both are trying to replace coal, but gas now is a lot of gas and many people are building it. But on the other hand, people say gas is really not the solution. So can you give us some your view?
Thank you, Paul. We're good friends, so the question are usually more difficult.
I will have a difficult for you.
First of all, the observatory is not looking after the energy policy, so I try to answer in a scientific way. Of course, coal and oil are very polluting, and they are very polluting and has been used as fossil fuel for over 100 years, and we see the consequence nowadays. And LNG, the natural gas, is getting more and more popular in different countries, including Hong Kong. But bear in mind that LNG is still a fossil fuel. So even though it emits less greenhouse gas than coal and oil and less polluting, it's still emitting greenhouse gas. So when compared with renewable energy, it is still not as good as renewable energy that has much, much lower greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, energy consumptions is very important for economic growth, as mentioned by speakers, and we cannot get rid of fossil fuel immediately at the moment. And the use of energies requires a lot of different sources of energy, because not just for whether it's greenhouse gas emissions, we have to consider other manufacturers, reliability, cost, and the culture, and the local economy, and as far as the geographical problem. So there's a many factors affect the composition of energy use in a place, or the sources of energy use. For natural gas, there's another issue that although it is lower greenhouse gas emission than many different kinds of fossil fuel, but there are also precautions, because like nuclear, you have to be very stringent in the safety and precautions, and also the social very controversial. LNG seems to be less on that part, but remember, LNG is still methane. Methane, technically speaking, is 25 to 30 times more effective than CO2 in greenhouse gas warming. So when we use the LNG as a kind of sources, we have to make sure that in our mining of greenhouse gases, in the mining of the LNG, the applications to transportations and the burning of them has to reduce the leakage to a minimum. Otherwise, remember, one methane is 25 CO2. So we have to make sure that all this to be very stringent and reduce the leakage. and make good use of that at the time to reduce the carbon emissions if we want to decide it as one of the sources in the near future. But ultimately, my opinion is that we have to move away from fossil fuel and try to make good use of the renewable energies and other sources to provide reliable energy sources for the city or the community. And another issue is about the major important point is that apart from the composition of energies sources, saving of energy and make good use of energy is also very, very important in society. For example, in Hong Kong, as mentioned by the speakers, we have a quite high carbon emission per head. Everybody here is emitting more than many different countries. So I think that this is implied that we have much room for improvement in improving the carbon emission per head in Hong Kong. By all means, for example, district cooling, as mentioned, the renewable energy, the energy saving, and many other issues that we can discuss further. I have some ideas on that, but we can discuss further and leave more time for other speakers. Thank you.
The next question before I open to the floor is Mr. Wang. This is an online question, and it's very straightforward, but I don't know how to answer it, even myself. China resources carbon intensity for the energy is quoted as 0.3 per kilowatt hour, but COP is 0.51. So how could China resources achieve such a low carbon intensity? So can you elaborate on this?
Okay. Do you mean the coal-fire?
No, the carbon intensity for your whole portfolio.
Okay. Because we have as at the presentation of the earlier, we have over 20% of the power capacity is in renewable, and we have more. We have more the coal-fire turbines is in the large. It's the newest turbines because we have developed these power factories in the later years. You know the 2010s, and we have starting to build a wind power plant through 2003. So the technology is very new. I think it has two factors, and the third is we are continually to renew the technologies of the power plant every year. So you can say see in the year this year we have a 19 billion HK dollar in the investment. So we have 72% on the renewable, and the others almost all of them would be put into the renew for the equipments. So we have can achieve the lowest power, the carbon emissions.
But you don't have any nuclear. Do you have a nuclear?
Not yet.
Okay.
We are low. We are also low in the hydropower. What we are having is the wind and in the solar or PV. I think it's a very effective way for lower the carbon. So there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wang. So it's quite clear that everybody is developing renewable energy, including COP. Maybe I can open up the floor for a couple of questions from the floor. Are there any questions from the? Oh, they're coming. Maybe I ask the floor first. So some more online questions have arrived. Okay. Can you pass the mic?
Can you share with us some experience as I know that CL Power is some pilot projects in carbon capture in China, and can you introduce a little bit about how with the background of it and how's the performance to date? Thank you.
So can you try to answer the question?
Okay, actually, I'm not very familiar with the carbon capture, but I just maybe Henry, you'll be more familiar with that.
You are both the Wang family, so you should have your
I'm
brother.
happy to help out a long family member. Sorry, I can help to answer that question. I was, when I was the director of Shell, I was very honored to be invited to join the UK-China carbon capture bilateral working group. And China has been interested in carbon capture for the last 20 years and has now several pilot projects which are ongoing at the moment. And one of the most exciting one is called the Tsz-cheung project in the central part of China, where it is really very rich in coal in Ningxia area. And they have a lot of coal to chemical plants in one area where they're converting coal into synthesis gas via very advanced clean coal technologies. And then these processes then generates large amount of CO2. But the unique thing about this chemical area in Ningxia is that you have a lot of plants within a very small area. So they are able to build a very efficient collection system which allow them to collect all the CO2, purified it with a very advanced solvent absorption process which takes out all the impurity. Then you have a very pure stream of CO2 which you can consider using for clean plastic production as opposed to normal plastic production. So this plastic material will be very clean and bio considered, so will attract very premium prices. Alternatively, you can use coal to convert the CO2 to convert into other chemical materials or energy carriers like methanol or biofuel. I hope that answered the question.
Okay. Yeah, I think there are quite a lot of development in this area, but we still have to wait for really something which can have a big carbon capture, because they are small, but you know a coal-fired power plant can generate a lot of carbon. So really we are looking for something big in order to be effective, both in terms of cost and in terms of sort of technology effectiveness. Yeah. Any other question from the floor? I think you have the, okay, there's a lady at the back.
Hello, speaker. I have a questions for Peter, and maybe Doctor Lee can help a little bit. Mr. Wang have talked about before that Hong Kong has a high. You think that Hong Kong has a high potential to develop renewable energy, but everybody knows in here that Hong Kong has very limited land, and it seems to me a lot of innovations that you introduce about renewable energy, it takes up a lot of space. So how do you see, what can you recommend us to take a balance between building houses for Hong Kong now and to develop all the technology necessary for renewable energy?
Yes, I would say that the focus, I mean, as of now, Hong Kong imports most of the primary energy that is used, and I don't see that Hong Kong will be, self-sufficient with renewable energy. So I think that the focus should be on energy efficiency and creating infrastructure to be to utilize the fuel or the energy, the primary energies at a very high degree. At the same time, look into other processes. For example, the building sector could look into how can the building design, how should you build buildings, tall buildings, skyscrapers, to reduce the cooling demand. Maybe you can look in. Maybe it's also important to look into alternative building materials, or the fact that producing cement uses a lot of coal, and producing steel use a lot of coal. So these processes can also be, I mean, there are concepts, pilot projects that try to use, for example, hydrogen in the process of producing steel, and maybe that can also be used for coal to produce cement. So I think the focus should be on energy efficiency and high utilization of fuel, and then the actually production of the energy should not necessarily be done in Hong Kong, but hopefully the primary energy imported Hong Kong should be renewable.
Okay, any comment from other speakers?
Maybe I can add to that. I think, yes, I think I understand your concerns about space and also the urban congestions. And that was something we also discussed in the climate forum with the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology in January. But the two areas that I'd like to share with you, which are actually progressing very fast, and a lot of innovations are going on which could change these for Hong Kong. First of all, it's in offshore wind. Offshore wind is now there's been a lot of work done in innovation of wind, particularly in the huge turbines. And these, a lot of huge turbines are being installed, offshore wind turbines being installed in the UK and also in Copenhagen in Denmark, which allows generations of offshore electricity at a very, very competitive rate for urban utilization. One circulation of these turbines, David Attenborough, in his famous documentary recently have said, one circulation of these huge turbines with wingspan as big as a Boeing aircraft could generate enough electricity for one house for one day. That's very important. So these could be things that Hong Kong could consider with the rich offshore resources. Secondly, with the IT developments, the digital developments, there are great improvements being made in advanced distributed power management systems. And these are widely applied in America and in Europe. I mean, a good example is that in California, Google, Apple, Yahoo, the building itself has distributed power management with fuel cells, with renewable panels. They generate enough power for their own use, and they have surplus power for export to the grid. But these will require regulatory changes and government regulations and working together with the power generators to allow distributed power exports. And this will encourage the growth of solar power. So every building or every factories in Hong Kong could have these distributed power management systems which allows them to use renewable power when they need to or export renewable power when they have surplus. So hopefully this helps. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Harry. And Mr. Wang, you want to supplement? No?
Okay. So I agree with Harry for the offshore wind and the distributed PV. So I have said it before. It's two ways of the Hong Kong's inner strength on the renewables. So the third way is to import the renewables maybe from the China mainland, because you know that the renewables, the power supply is not always comply with the power consumption. So it has its own peak. So in China, in some period, let's talk about the hydropower. Maybe in some area, some period, they will pour out the water because they don't need so much power. So you can buy this power in a very, very cheap price, and you can use the social, and another way is the social storage.
Demand
You know,
response,
yeah. The storage may have the the EV cars, EV bus, or the the train. So the moving vehicles may have its storage, and they are charged in the night. It's a very good storage because you don't have to invest more on this because people you're gonna pay the money and buy it. The other way is the distributed is the district cooling and the heating systems because they can shift the peak from shift the daily peak to the night, and you can you provide enough power with less power in the capacity, so you have to shift the peak and pave the valley.
Okay.
So it's I think all these are very good way for this.
So thank you, Mr. Wang. So surely there are quite a lot of technology can help us on energy efficiency, demand response. Maybe I can come back to the online questions, and this is a question for Dr. Lee. While we are dealing with the climate change, and we still need to have an interim period before we can really solve the issue. So now we have super typhoon, global warming, and storm surge. And last year, we literally escaped a major storm surge in Hong Kong during the visit of the super typhoon. And I have heard some rumors saying that the worst scenario storm surge, some places like Tolo Harbour, Victoria Harbour, can raise to a PD level of 8 meters. I'm not sure whether this figure is correct or not, but I just heard about this worst scenario. So, if it does happen, what are the solutions to this storm surge for Hong Kong? Because we are all living in Hong Kong, so we cannot jump into the sea. So, what can we do?
Again, there used to be very difficult questions again. About the rumor, I haven't heard about 8 meters, even from our director. But anyway, as you said, you already point out that we have a very lucky escape of the very, very high storm surge during the super typhoon Mangkhut that hit Hong Kong, that previously struck Hong Kong last year. And everybody can see from the social media and TV that how horrible the scene for those storm surge and wind waves, overtopping waves that affect the coastal areas. And maybe I put it as an example that during the strike of the typhoon Mangkhut last year, we have 2.3 meters of storm surge in the harbor. And the tide level, the astronomical tide level is a lip tide, this is a low tide, this is about 1 point something. So end up we have 3.88 meter. And for Harto, this 2017, still remember, at the time it comes together with a very high tide. It's 1 meter higher than Mangkhut last year. So imagine that we switch the case. Mangkhut coincides with super typhoon string with a high tide. That means 1 meter or slightly more than 1 meter higher than Mangkhut. And you can see from the TV, you put 1 more meter high water level, and you will see the flooding will be even more severe. But already quite severe indeed. You see the map, everywhere flooding. And so the issue of the future is even more worrying, is that, as I point out, the sea level rise is the most confident consequence of climate change. So if the sea level keep rising, we will see higher chance or high risk of storm surge, or even astronomical tide will cause flooding in some areas, for example, Sha Tin and Tolo Harbour. Nowadays, when you have high tide, that sometimes the both sides of the cycling link already getting some flooding, minor flooding. So if you imagine together with all the worst case come together, that may increase the risk of storm surge. And for typhoons, as I mentioned, that our future projection is that the typhoon will getting more stronger under climate change, and the rain it bear areas will getting more. So all acting together, we have to be prepared for the worst. So that's why, like many utilities and public government departments, are actually doing on these areas and try to reinforce their infrastructure to maintain good resilience to this kind of super typhoon or worse weather scenario. But having said that, there's already, or any time there's a limit. So it will have to rely on several aspects. For example, structural mitigations such as infrastructure improvement, like CLP, you did a lot. Also non-structure, including the water gate. When you see a high tide, you can put a temporary water gate to stop flooding. In Chinese, it's 挡水板, okay? Or other measures that you can try to reduce the damage of that incident that it doesn't happen very frequent, but with very high impacts. This is what we can do. And the other things that we can do is to prepare this from the public. At least you don't go to surfing and swimming under signal number 10, right? And you have to evacuate from low-lying areas and listen to the discipline force to evacuate when your situation is not good for you. That already can do a lot. For example, if we forecast there's a major typhoon coming like Mangkut, many people tap their windows, okay? Or do a lot of things to reduce the damage. For example, the floating, the temporary structure, reinforcement. That already help to reduce the loss of this kind of severe weather impact. There's many things we can do on that. Of course, in the action plan of climate change, there are also many other suggestions, including infrastructure improvement, preparedness, disaster plans, and all these things we can do can help to reduce the impact of the extreme weather triggered by the climate change.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lee. Yes, I do think that storm surge is a major threat for Hong Kong. And your director has said we may have another typhoon signal number 10 this year. 3 typhoon signal number 10 in 3 consecutive years. And so we may have a Mangkut 2.0. So
I would like to clarify is that he did not say may, cannot rule out. Because it happened in the past.
Yeah.
So we, as Paul said, we should stay vigilant on this aspect. Don't think you are lucky all the time. Okay.
Okay. Another question. Maybe I will open the floor again later. But another question is for maybe Dr. Lee and both Dr. Lee and Peter is. People always want to be lazy, and if you want to do some behavior change to reduce energy, they are always sort of maybe invested in the beginning, but very soon they will soon lose their momentum because they expect technology could help them rather than they themselves sort of contribute their effort. So do you think this thinking can really work? In other words, do you have any potential or existing technology that can really help us to do a lot of energy saving? Maybe I can start with Peter first.
You mean for individual level? For
on the individual technology. I mean,
yes.
If, I'm lazy, I don't want to do this anyway. But please help me if there are any technology.
I would say yes, sure, and especially at these times where the IoT and the digitalization is moving on so fast. I'm just looking from my personal experience. Moving from an ordinary cell phone to a smartphone was a huge leap, and now we are so addicted, and there's so many applications that are developed to can track everything from how we exercise, how we eat, how we sleep, but it can also monitor our energy consumption, and I think that can be a tool to actually to see how much what is the footprint of my life, for example. I can, but of course it requires some input in interest from the individual. You have to put in if you're traveling and what you eat and so forth. So yes, there's no. It's hard to predict all the future digital tools in this matter, I would say. Yeah, but I also think that there's a growing awareness of the climate crisis, and people are willing to absorb this knowledge and to do things, because people are worried. I am worried, for example, and I've seen one trend. I don't know if you heard of it. It's called plogging. It means that when you go out jogging, you bring a garbage bag and you actually pick up trash on the way. So yeah, that is a trend now, and so I think people are cleaning up beaches, and because they see, they also see whales drowning or eating plastic and die on the beach. So yes, the public's awareness is here. I don't know if it answers your question.
Yeah, and can Dr. Lee supplement?
Yeah, very well said by Peter. I don't think it's the problem of lazy. Actually, maybe they're too busy. For example, in Hong Kong, people are too busy. They don't have time to update their awareness. But I think there are many aspects we can do, all the way from personal status to policy aspects. But for the personal or everyday life, there are many ways to do. For example, as Henry said, we can put the temperature in the air conditioning room a little bit higher. For example, when you go to cinema to see the movies, you are freezing like a refrigerator, right? Shopping mall, they always keep very low temperature to make sure that you will go to buy clothes, right? Right? So all these things we can do, and also technology can also do give us a help. We have better and better batteries that can store the energy, so that they can help to maintain high efficiency in the renewable power, and also make the better fully utilized energies. We can develop new renewable energy sources such as hydrogen, and all this can do. And for example, one thing that many people easily forget is the water consumptions. Water consumptions also cause a lot of power, because we have to use the electricity to pump the water to your home, right? So next time when you have showers, do make it short, okay? Don't sing your favorite song for half an hour. I think this is all we can do. There are many ways to do, and also as long as I have the mic, I put for one item. It's not just for the individuals. I think many ways that the community can do that, even the government. Many ways we forget that we can help to reduce greenhouse gas emission is the urban planning, building design, traffic, congestions. As long as we can resolve or improve all these kind of situations, that's already a large room of improvement to reduce the greenhouse gas emission per capita in Hong Kong. There are all aspects that we can do. So that's why we said we need a collective effort to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lee. Talking about shower, I remember a few years ago I saw a poster in the UK, a very romantic poster, saying that 2 for a shower. So, obviously it's a man and a woman. So, but my conclusion is there's no excuse for being lazy. Things you should do, you must do. And actually, I came back just from a hostel in the university. At today's temperature, they're still turning on the air conditioner. It's just unfortunate, because I cannot see how can they wear a lot of clothes but turning the air conditioner. So that is, I think, not something I would like to see, but it's still happening. But as you said, everybody contribute will surely help, and it's everybody's duty to tackle climate change, and we should all contribute by ourselves. I think we are running out of time now, so maybe I would like to take this opportunity to thank the 4 speakers for their very insightful view, and also their very sort of informative speeches. So let's put our hands together for the 4 speakers. Thank you. Yeah.